Hello, my name is Harrison, and I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My life turned upside down after a single conversation, one that shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. My wife, Ellis, and I have been married for 10 years. Our relationship had its fair share of ups and downs, like any marriage, but I always believed we were happy. We don't have kids, by choice. We wanted to focus on traveling, building our careers, and figuring life out before starting a family. Ellis works in marketing, and her career has skyrocketed over the past few years. I've always been proud of her, even though it meant long hours and frequent business trips. As for me, I'm just an ordinary engineer, steady and predictable. Things started to change a few months ago. Ellis became distant. She spent more and more time at work, often staying late or claiming she had important projects to finish over the weekend. I told myself she was just busy. People get busy, right? But there was something else. Her eyes didn't have the same warmth when she looked at me. It felt like we were drifting apart, living under the same roof, but no longer truly connected. Last week, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. It was a typical Friday evening. I cooked dinner, poured some wine, and we sat down at the table. She looked tired, and I noticed how nervously she was twirling her glass. "Ellis, I feel like something's changed between us," I began, trying to keep my voice calm. "Is something wrong? Can we talk about it?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a sadness I couldn't quite understand. Then she said the words that have been echoing in my head ever since. "I need some space, Harrison. I need to figure things out. I'm not sure what I want anymore." I sat there, frozen. Space? What does that even mean? I asked her, and she sighed, explaining that she wanted to take a break from our relationship to reflect on herself and her feelings. She said she needed time to understand if we were still right for each other. It sounded more like she was filing for emotional divorce than taking a step back to think. She assured me it wasn't personal, that this was her own internal struggle. But how could it not be personal? This was our marriage. I suggested counseling, a weekend getaway, even quitting my job to spend more time with her. But she shot down every idea. The next morning, she packed a few bags and moved into a rental apartment. She said she'd be back when she had clarity. I stood there in our empty living room, feeling like the air had been sucked out of my chest. The days that followed were a blur. I went to work, came home, and stared at my phone, hoping she'd call or text. But there was nothing. The silence was deafening. Then, a few days later, as I scrolled through social media absent-mindedly, I stumbled upon a photo. It was from a corporate event. Ellis stood there, smiling brightly, holding a glass of champagne. Next to her was a colleague I'd seen before. Tall, charming, the kind of guy who's always too friendly. They looked close. Too close. My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something about that photo screamed that space wasn't the only thing she needed. I decided not to confront her, yet, but deep inside, a storm was brewing. Something didn't add up, and I knew I had to figure out the truth. The days turned into weeks, and the silence from Ellis became unbearable. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but it never was. Instead, it was the same daily routine. Emails, work updates, or a random text from a friend asking if I was okay. And honestly, I wasn't. I started to notice things I had ignored before. Small details that, in hindsight, painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Her increased hours at work, the sudden interest in team-building retreats, the way she'd come home exhausted but with a smile that wasn't meant for me. It was like I'd been living in a house where the foundation had been crumbling, but I was too busy focusing on the decor to notice. That photo of her and her colleague, whose name I later learned was Connor, lingered in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about how close they seemed. The way she leaned slightly toward him, her smile so natural, so effortless. It wasn't the smile she gave me anymore. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was reading too much into things. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. So, one evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. I hated myself for it. I felt like I was betraying her trust, even though she was the one who'd walked out on me. but I needed answers. I couldn't keep sitting in the dark, wondering what was going on. Her email was still logged in, and at first, everything looked normal. Work emails, project updates, the usual. But then I found a folder labeled personal. It wasn't hidden, but something about it made me pause. I clicked on it, and that's when my heart dropped. Inside were emails exchanged between Ellis and Connor. They weren't explicit, but they were intimate. They talked about late-night dinners after work, inside jokes I didn't understand, and plans to meet up during her time away. One email, in particular, stood out. "Thank you for being there for me, Connor. I don't know what I'd do without you. You make everything feel so much clearer." Clearer? She said she needed space to figure things out, but it seemed like Connor had already provided her with all the clarity she needed. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to call her and demand an explanation. But instead, I just sat there, staring at the blank screen, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed. The next day, I decided to do some digging. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I called her office, pretending to be a delivery service trying to confirm her schedule. The receptionist, not suspecting anything, told me that Ellis was working remotely most days, but came in occasionally for meetings. That was a lie. She told me she was going into the office every day to stay busy and focused. So where was she? I drove to her rental apartment that evening, parked a few blocks away, and waited. I felt ridiculous, like some amateur detective in a bad movie. But I had to know. Hours passed, and just when I was about to give up, I saw her. She walked out of the building, dressed in the same outfit I'd seen in one of her work selfies. But she wasn't alone. Connor was with her. They got into his car and drove off, and I followed at a safe distance. My stomach was in knots. I didn't know what I was expecting to see, but nothing could have prepared me for where they went. A small boutique hotel on the edge of town. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. They walked inside together, laughing, completely oblivious to the world around them. Or to me, sitting there, watching my life fall apart. I stayed in that car for hours, waiting for them to come out. When they finally did, it was late. Ellis looked radiant, her hair slightly messy, her cheeks flushed. She kissed Connor on the cheek before they parted ways, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I replayed everything in my mind, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Was it my fault? Had I missed the signs? Or was this just who she'd become? A stranger to the woman I thought I knew. By morning, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. This wasn't just about space anymore. This was betrayal, plain and simple. And now, I had to figure out what to do next. The morning after seeing Ellis and Connor at that hotel, I felt like a shadow of myself. My chest felt heavy, my thoughts were racing, and my emotions swung wildly between anger, sadness, and confusion. I couldn't sit still. Every moment alone in that empty house felt like torture. I decided it was time to confront Ellis. I deserved answers, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I knew exactly what I had seen, but I needed to hear it from her. I called her that afternoon, my voice trembling as I forced out the words. "Ellis, we need to talk. Face to face." She hesitated. I could hear it in her voice. "Harrison, I don't think now's a good time. I'm still sorting things out." Sorting things out? My blood boiled at how casually she could lie to me, but I kept my composure. "It's important," I said firmly. "I'll come by your place tonight." There was a long pause before she finally agreed. "Okay, tonight." The rest of the day felt endless. I replayed every possible scenario in my mind, imagining what she might say and how I'd respond. I wasn't sure if I was ready for the truth, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. When I arrived at her apartment, she opened the door, looking as polished and composed as ever. It was almost insulting how effortless she made it look. I stepped inside, and the air between us was thick with tension. We sat down in her small living room, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Ellis, I need you to be honest with me. What's going on? Why did you really leave?" She looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. Harrison, I told you. I needed space to figure things out. I felt like we were stuck, like I wasn't growing as a person. Is Connor helping you grow? The words came out sharper than I intended, and her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? She stammered, but her face flushed, betraying her attempt to act confused. I know, Ellis. I've seen the emails. I saw you two at the hotel. My voice cracked as I said it, the pain of admitting it out loud cutting deeper than I expected. Her face went pale. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it, but then she slumped back into the couch, her shoulders sagging. Harrison, I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. It just did. I stared at her, struggling to process the words. It just did? That's all you have to say? You've been lying to me, sneaking around with him, and now you're acting like it's some accident. She started to cry, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain. I wasn't happy, Harrison. I felt like I was suffocating in our marriage. Connor, he made me feel alive again. Her words hit me like a freight train. Suffocating? I had spent years trying to make her happy, supporting her career, being there for her in every way I knew how. And this was how she repaid me? You felt suffocated, I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to work through it, you decided to cheat? She wiped at her tears, shaking her head. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't know how to tell you. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. You didn't know how to tell me? You didn't know how to tell me that you were breaking our vows? That you were destroying everything we built together? Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't find it in me to comfort her. This wasn't something I could fix with kind words or an apology. The damage was done. I don't even know who you are anymore, Ellis, I said quietly, my voice trembling with emotion. The woman I married would never have done this. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Harrison, please. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You succeeded. I turned and walked out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I got into my car, and I sat there for a long time, trying to catch my breath. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if I could forgive her, if I even wanted to try. But one thing was clear. The woman I thought I knew was gone, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that no longer made sense. As I drove home that night, I realized something. The space she had asked for, the freedom she claimed to need, she could have it. She could have all the space in the world, far away from me and the life we had built together. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, sleep nothing but a distant thought. My mind ran in circles, playing back every conversation, every moment Ellis and I had shared over the years. How had we gone from a strong, loving marriage to this? And worse, how had I been so blind? Morning came, but I didn't feel rested. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Every object in our home felt like a ghost of our past. Our wedding photo still hung by the fireplace, her favorite mug was in the cabinet, her perfume lingered in the air. I couldn't sit in the uncertainty anymore. I needed clarity. First, I reached out to my financial advisor. If Ellis had been keeping secrets, I needed to make sure I wasn't blindsided by anything else. A few hours later, I got the report. The charges were all there. Restaurants, trips, unexplained purchases, all while she was supposedly figuring things out. It was a gut punch. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was financial too. She hadn't just lied to me about her feelings. She had been spending our shared resources on something or someone else. I took a deep breath and closed my laptop. This wasn't just about what she had done. It was about what I was going to do next. I wasn't the kind of man who acted on impulse, but I also wasn't going to sit back and wait for her to decide the future of my life. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Ellis. I need to talk to you. Please. I stared at it for a long time. She wanted to talk? Now? After everything? I responded with just 3 words. Meet me tomorrow. This wasn't about getting closure anymore. This was about finally confronting the truth. The next evening, I sat in the living room, waiting. I had no idea what she was going to say, but I wasn't interested in another vague excuse. This time, I needed real answers. When Ellis walked through the door, she looked different. Her confidence was gone, replaced by something more fragile. She sat down, twisting her hands together. "Harrison," she started, her voice small. "I don't even know where to begin." "Start with the truth," I said, my tone firm but calm. She hesitated. "I know I hurt you. I know I should have handled things differently. But I was lost, and I didn't know how to tell you that something in our marriage wasn't working for me anymore." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to listen. "You didn't know how to tell me, so instead, you just left? You lied." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." I held up a hand. "Stop saying that. You did hurt me. You made a choice." She swallowed hard. "I thought if I took some time, I could figure out what I really wanted. But everything just got more complicated." I exhaled slowly. "And where does Connor fit into that complication?" She flinched. That was all the answer I needed. "I didn't plan for that to happen," she said. "It just did." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "That's your explanation? It just did? That's all I get?" She shook her head. "I was confused, Harrison. I thought—" "No," I interrupted. "You weren't confused. You were selfish." Tears streamed down her face now. "I still love you," she whispered. "I want to fix this." I studied her, trying to see the woman I had married in the one sitting before me. But she was gone. Maybe she had been gone for a long time. "You already made your choice, Ellis," I said quietly. "And now I'm making mine." The next morning, I made another call to my lawyer. I wasn't going to wait around for Ellis to figure out her feelings. I had my answer. Now, I needed to protect myself. As I was finalizing the paperwork, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Ellis. It was him. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Connor. Of all people, why was he reaching out to me? I nearly deleted the message. But then another one came. "Ellis isn't telling you the full truth." I wasn't sure why I responded, but I did. "There's nothing to talk about." His reply came instantly. "Meet me one time, then decide if you want to hear the truth." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Later that night, I walked into a quiet bar, spotting Connor immediately. He looked way too comfortable, as if he had nothing to lose. I sat across from him, my expression cold. "I don't know why you think I care what you have to say," I said. Connor smirked. "Because I know Ellis. And I know she's keeping her options open." I scoffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "She told me she was done with you," he said casually. "But now she's trying to win you back? Sounds like she doesn't know what she wants." I clenched my fists under the table. I hated that he was talking about my wife like this. Ex-wife. I corrected myself. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because I don't play games. I thought we had something real, but it turns out I was just a distraction for her. And now, she's running back to you." I sat there for a moment, absorbing his words. Then I stood up. "I don't care what her plans are. I'm done." And I walked away, leaving him in the past, right where he belonged. The next morning, I sent Ellis a message. "I've started the paperwork. My lawyer will be in touch." Her response came quickly. "Harrison, please don't do this. We can fix this." I exhaled, shaking my head. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. The divorce process wasn't easy. Ellis tried to argue over details, but I was prepared. My lawyer handled everything, and I focused on moving forward. I redecorated the house, removing anything that reminded me of our past. I started focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with old friends, even taking up new hobbies. Ellis eventually stopped reaching out. I heard through mutual friends that things didn't work out for her the way she expected. As for me, I was free. Life didn't turn out the way I had planned, but sometimes the endings we don't choose are the ones we need the most.